to that, but it wasn't working so well. So I went back to the stationary internet, which just means that once we start to move, I'll have to change. Okay, so let's get started. Can everybody hear me? I'm the Mishnah cover too. Prime, can you hear me?
Yes, no problem.
Okay, good morning, Benji. So let's get started. Chaymer b'truma. Truma, there is, although we've been talking up until now about the fact that kachim is more chamer than truma, and we went through 11 different ways in which kachim is more chamer than truma. There are actually ways where truma is more chamer than kachim. Chamer b'truma should be Yehuda, and Yehuda is the region in which Yerushalayim is, and the Gemara is going to explain soon why it's picking Yehuda, because in fact there are Amaratzim everywhere. Nemonin al taharas yain v'shemen kol yemosh hashana. If an Amaretz brings wine or oil to the Beis Hamikdash for Nesachim or for Menachos or for any other type of carbon, he can tell us that it's tahar, and we'll use it as a carbon, because Amos HaKodesh, no one's going to play with fire, and we're confident that he watched it properly. But truma, if an Amoritz wanted to give a coin truma, the coin would not be able to accept it because it could be truma tamea. But during the pressing season, where the wine presses are operating and the oil presses are operating, then afala truma. And Rashi tells us, because during that period of time, everybody before the pressing season cleans and purifies their presses so that they can at least start off on the right foot and process all of their oil and all of their wine b'tahira. Once that season is over and they're no longer in the period of time where they're believed to say that their truma is tahar, or that anything is tahar, and a kohen Talmud Chacham was brought, a kohen chaver was brought by an Amaretz, a barrel of wine that's truma. He shouldn't accept it from him because it's tamei. What should he do? He should tell the person who's giving him the truma, please keep it in your wine storehouse. Wait till the next season where you have your tahira hechsher certificate, and during that next season, give it to me. So it's funny, even though I know this barrel and I can identify this barrel, I have the serial number of the barrel, and I know he tried giving it to me earlier, and at that point, the kohen was not allowed to accept it because he had to assume it was tamei. If that same barrel comes to him in the next pressing season, he's allowed to accept it as if it's tahar. That's the gzeira of the chacham. What if the kohen comes? What if the Amaretz comes to the kohen and says, "Here's a barrel of truma, but by the way, there is some kodesh in here as well." Then he's believed, and the entire barrel is tar because you can't separate the truma from the wine. If one's tamei, they're all tamei, and since the Amaretz is neman to make sure that his kachim are tahar, so therefore the whole barrel will be tar. The question will arise is, what in the world could a kohen do with a barrel that's full of a mixture of kachim and truma? He can't eat it because there's kachim in here. So I'm going to make an assumption. I schmoozed it over and learning with somebody, but I'm make an assumption that what happened is that Ma'aret said, there's X amount of gallons of wine in this barrel that I will designate eventually, and we will designate that as truma. And then there's X amount of gallons of kachim, or there's a revius of kachim in there that we'll designate later. And that allows him to then, at a later date, take out the revius and say, okay, this was the kodesh portion, and then the remaining will be chulin or truma. What about kadei and kadei shemen? We've discussed the actual wine and the oil, the contents of the barrel. But what happens with the barrel itself? The kohen empties out the barrel, the Gabai by Kachim, the Gizber empties out the barrel. Can this barrel be used? And assuming that the barrel is tahar. So Kadei Yain, the Kadei Shemen Hamadu Mois. If you have Kadei Yain and Kadei Shemen that have Demai in them, not the my dalad mem aleph yud. Medumois means it's mixed. It's mixed. Usually, what that means is that as truma and chulin muravan zebozeh, the Gemara is going to give us some more detail on what this actually was. So the halach is, let me just change over to the next amud. So now we're on today's daf, which is Chaf Hey Amud Aleph. So the halach is nemonin. They are believed aleim to say that these bears will be tar b'shas hagitos v'abadim during the pressing season where they have an emonus, and v'koidim legitos shivim yoim, even 70 days before. Why 70 days before? Because Rashi says that the people who operate presses, they prepare their presses well in advance of when they need to press. So 70 days before, they have already made all their presses tar in anticipation of the new season, the new pressing season. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Yehuda in Bagalil loy. It seems to say that it's only in Yehuda where there's any type of belief, where you could believe the Amaratim that anything that they bring for Kachim is Tahar. But Galil, which is actually further north, Tzvas is in the Galil, Yehuda is in the Yerushalayim region. So the north is the Galil. I don't know if there's an actual red line, a demarcation point between Yehuda and the Galil. Does anybody know exactly where that line is? I'm not sure. But it definitely means the north. In the north, they were not believed. Loy, my timer. Why can we not assume that even if they come from the north, they're also makbid on kachim? Their attitude wouldn't be different. There was a strip of land, I guess, that ran east-west, and when they would be coming down from the south, they would have to traverse, they would have to go through a strip of land where there were kusim there. Now, kusim have a din of a goy because they proven to be oived avodah zarah, and the chachamim made a gzeira that all of the land of goyim is considered tamei. So therefore, if you merely walk through the land of goyim, you become tamei. So if you try to get this barrel of wine from Galil, from the north, down to Yerushalayim and Yehuda, it's going to be tamei. So it's not that we don't believe the Amoritz, it's because it's pretty much impossible to get the wine down to Yerushalayim. So Tosfos asks a very important kasha from Rabbi Chanan. So if that's the case, how did they ever bring Efer Parah Aduma to Galil? We know that if the Efer Parah Aduma becomes Tamei, it loses its potency. So how did they ever get Efer Parah Aduma to someone who is Tamei in the Galil in order to spray on him? Now, from this Tosfos kasha, I learned something new. I always thought that if you needed to be spritzed with the Efer Parah Aduma because you were Tamei, you would travel to wherever the Efer Parah Aduma lab is. But it seems like
that's what I thought.
Right. So it's very possible that when someone was Tamei, they said, do me a favor, don't travel around too much. You're only going to spread it. Stay in isolation, stay where you are to avoid being with anything else, and we'll bring it to you. That's what it seems like, because otherwise, what's Tosfos' kasha? So Tosfos' kasha is, how did they bring Efer Parah Aduma? So Tosfos answers, it's very possible that there's a very narrow snake path that you can get through the Eretz Ha'amim that won't be Tamei. So Efer Parah Aduma is a little vial. That's not a problem. But barrels of wine, barrels of oil, there's no narrow snake path that can accommodate that, and that's why we have a problem. Okay. The other very interesting question Tosfos asks is, how are people Oila Regel? If you're coming from Tzvas for Yom Tov to be Oila Regel in Yerushalayim and you're forced to pass through Eretz Ha'amim, which make you Tamei, so how could you be Oila Regel? How could you be Oila Regel? You're going to have to come a week before because you're going to need Zrika because you become a Tamei Mace. You're going to need Zrika on the 3rd and the 7th day. So Tosfos says it must be that people who came from the Galil actually had to come a week before because they would become Tamei just by traversing the Eretz Ha'amim, and because of that, they actually needed to do the Tahira. But there are those who say that the Tumah of Eretz Ha'amim is not Tumas Mace. It could be a lower level of Tumah that they could solve just by going to the mikveh when they get down to Yerushalayim. Correct the Gemara. So you cannot traverse, you cannot take this wine and oil through the Eretz Amim without it becoming Tamei. Correct the Gemara. We have an option. The Nasiv B'Sheda Teva Umigdal. Why don't we bring it in some type of box cabinet that would be in itself an oil, a nice big box? If you travel it in a big box and you're just going through the airspace of Eretz Amim, the box should shield what you have inside it from becoming Tamei from Eretz Amim. Rashi says, Rashi doesn't speak directly about this. Rashi speaks to the Teretz. So Zok Gemara, because it's an oil. See, an oil contains tumah, but an oil also repels tumah. If you're in the oil, tumah won't come from outside the oil into the oil. So if there's tumah be'eretz amim that's shooting up, and as you walk on it, you become tumah. If you're in a box, well, the box will not allow the tumah to penetrate. Zok Gemara, Hamani Rebbe, the oil zaruk lav shmei oil. Rebbe holds that an oil zaruk, meaning an airborne oil, is not considered an oil. The Tanya we learned, hanichnas le'eretz hamim b'sheda teva umigdal. If you go into Eretz Amim in a box, Rebbe mitame, Rebbe holds a tamei, Rebbe Yosy by Yehuda Matayr. So you see that Rebbe holds mitame. Rebbe holds that the oil zaruk, the fact that it's the oil, this box that's airborne, is not mafsik for the tumah. So I'm going to take a short break because I want to transfer my internet from my stationary internet that I have here where we are to Akiva's mobile internet. So let's hope that this time it will work a little bit better. What's that? I don't see it here at all. Akiva, is internet still here?
Should be.
So I don't see it here at all.
There's no 129 McField right?
No.
You see it?
No.
All right. Okay, so let me
So I'll continue once.
keep going.
I'll keep
and
going.
I'm going to restart.
Okay. So now this question of oil zark, Rashi says, oil hamataltel, an oil that is a mobile oil, an oil that's a mobile oil is a trashy, the nizrak, and you could throw it airborne, lab shmei oil. Liyos mafsik ve'navira shel eretz amim, to create a barrier, a protective barrier between the air of the eretz amim, and therefore ve'im gozra lavira. The Rabbanim were geyser that the air above the eretz amim will make you tamei, and you don't have an oil that will protect you because the oil is a mobile oil. So this oil azark is really, we would know it's an oil and it is airborne. Are you allowed to fly over a base? I think it's not the flowers, but I know you've all seen on of the tents killed you. So of course you said Hazar, and then the oil our Rabbi said will not protect you from Toma. However, he had another innovative idea. But he thought to suggest the Toma will be outside only from the inside. If it that gave access to the second floor. On the first floor, the tumah goes out through the trap door into the second floor. If you cover the whole of the trap door with cheres, it would not allow tumah to penetrate up into the. That's not tumah. So Zukter, these are that could become to Toma. Zohar, Chesef, Unechosh, Bedil, and Iforus. So silver, copper, Bedil, I think tin, and my first Dr. Moshe, the new metals indicate, in fact, that the new metal again. I just got disconnected. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if anybody can hear me. Yeah, I keep on getting cut off, I think. Exactly. That's part of his discussion. You can hear me. I wish if you
A little choppy.
but I'm not. It's a little bit choppy.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll hopefully our internet will come more stable. So oil. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh, I lost my sharing. That's what happened. I lost my sharing. When I get shut off, I lose my sharing. So now I'm going to share again. Okay. So the Gemara says the carrying through air to Amim in a be an oil zark, meaning it would protect from Tumah. So the Gemara another option. If I want him from Vas, from the Galil down to again for a second. Maybe what I will do is reduce my bandwidth.
I'm getting five bars here.
It's possible that my bandwidth is not good. It's possible that bandwidth is not good.
Turn off my.
If I can
Matter.
connect the door,
Yeah.
I'll shut off my camera and I'll do this way. So I'll try that. I'm trying off my camera. Maybe that will make a difference. Oh, see the Gemara. Okay. Zog the hell. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm not holding. If anybody can hear me, please.
I can hear you, but then it's still choppy.
It's still choppy. Okay.
Control to me. Okay. So
we'll have to just hope we'll get the reception. Yeah.
Which is
Right.
dial one.
Okay. Do you have the phone number, honey? But I'm gonna shut off my dial on the so at least we won't have an issue with. So I'm logged in with phone. I'm gonna shut off myself on the computer and then we'll just do it. I'm just waiting for Akiva to talk in.
What room are you in? 613?
Yes. Battery is too low to charge an external device. Might be a problem with the battery. So let's plug in.
Gotcha. Okay. Here we go. And I plug it in.
Okay, hi, everyone can hear me, right?
Hi, everyone.
You have to mute yours and there's no echo back. Now we're good. Okay, Dr. Gemara weiter. Dr. Gemara weiter. So we are now up to, it should be clear now because now we're using phone line and we're not using anymore no longer using the, just give me 1 second. Okay, so here, keep it, take it. So Dr. Gemara weiter. So why can't we use a summit puzzle? The Gemara ain't happy to tell the summit puzzle. That's not good for him. But summit puzzle does not protect. Okay? How do we learn? Right? How do you say that summit puzzle does not protect? How do you say that summit puzzle does not protect technique? I have a price. Summit puzzle does protect. Anya ain't active. Water of the paraduma will not protect by some Myla. But Kodesh Nitza, Kodesh, Kachim would be protected by a Tzomit Puzzle. Zakagmar Loi, that's not what's not protected. Hamayim She'enan Nukudoshim Nitzolan B'Tzomit Puzzle. What the Bryce is trying to exclude is regular water of Kulin, that will not become Tomei with Tzomit Puzzle. That Mayim of the Paraduma will become Tomei with Tzomit Puzzle. Right to the Gemara, Ula said, Chavraya Ndatkin the Galila. How could you tell me that in Galil there's no way to bring Kachim? Because you have to pass through Ershamim and it'll never be Torah, it'll never survive. Ula told us that the people in Galil actually do prepare everything but the higher, as if they're ready to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash. Why would they bother doing that? If there's no way to get it down to the Beis Hamikdash? Because the reason why they prepare it is because they're hoping that Eliyahu will come and will find them a route that's clear of any tumah. He'll be able to say that there's no tumah here. They'll clear a route for them, and that's how they will be able to transmit or transport their wine and oil to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. Zog the Gemara weiter. Ubishas Hagitois Nemonin Afal Truma. Bishas Hagitois, they're believed even for Truma. Correct Gemara Ramini. Hagoymer Zayso, if someone is finishing up his olives, so it's an Amaoret, who's in the middle of pressing all his olives to make them into oil, Yeshayar Kupa Achas, what he should do in order to give Truma, since he's not believed that his oil will be tar, he should leave one box of olives untouched that didn't come into contact with any type of liquid, meaning it could not possibly have become tamei, and the itnena le anikoin or le enaikoin. It's either give it to an anikoin because it's talking about a very small amount, and normally you'd give that to someone who's poor, or it might mean le enaikoin, or le enaikoin give it to a koin. So here the answer is if he doesn't make it into oil, which is the normal way to do it, and he gives it to the kohen in olive form, and the olives could not have possibly become tamei, then he has a great solution of how to deliver even truma, even shaloi b'shas hagas. So in fact, you see that even b'shas hagas they're not nemon, because obviously this is speaking b'shas hagas. It's not goymer zayso. Someone who's in the middle of pressing, he should not press into oil the olives that he wants to give for truma. He should leave it in olive form. So our Mishnah says truma, but in fact you see that b'shas hagitas are not nemon, and the Amaris has to leave the olives in olive form and not make it into oil. Omer Nachman loy kasher. It's not fair. Haba charfi, haba afli. It all depends on where you're holding. If you have a batch of olives that was ready where everyone else is pressing during the pressing season, sure, then even in oil form, we know it's not tamei. The Chachamim say there we could rely on the Amaret that it's not tamei. But aptly, if it's late in the season, meaning if the pressing season is over, now you're just extending the season a little bit to press these olives, those are no longer protected by the umbrella of the season of the gas, and therefore, in order for the Amaret to be able to give Truma, he's going to have to protect these olives from becoming tamei by leaving them in olive form. Amar Rav Ada Bar Abba gave an example of what does it mean, late blooming olives. Like those of your father. So I guess Rav Ada was saying that it's like the father. It could be Rav Nachman talking about the Bab and saying it's like your father's grapes or your father's olives would sometimes be ready much later after the season, and therefore they didn't have protection. So if an Amaretz was pressing olives at that point, he should leave the Truma in unpressed form. If Yosef Amar, the Galila Sham, maybe the Brisa that we just quoted that says that even the Shas Hagas, you don't trust, and we're choshet for Tuma by the oil of an Amaretz, maybe that's in Galil. Maybe in Galil, that's the place that the Brisa is referring to when the Brisa says that they cannot be trusted for the Tuma. I'm going to prove to you that Galil would be trusted, the Shas Hagitas. Over Hayardin, the other side of the Yarden, the Galil and Galil, Harayin Ki Yehuda. They're exactly like Yehuda. So that obviously says you cannot say that in Galil they're not Nema B'Shas HaGas. Rather, Nemanin Ala Yain, B'Shas HaYain, Ala Shemin B'Shas HaShemin. You believe that Yain is Torah during the pressing season for wine, oil is Torah during the pressing season for oil. But of course, during the pressing season for oil, you're not having on the wine. And vice versa. During the pressing season of wine, you're not having on oil. So you can't say that the price that says that a goymer zeisov, he should prevent them from becoming tamei by not pressing them. You can't say that's referring to Galil, because Galil would be no different than Yehuda, and B'Shas HaGidais, everything would be Torah. The teretz must be that it's referring to olives that are already past the season. It's no longer the time of the gas. Therefore, Amaretz is not Nema. So the only way for him to protect it from becoming tamei is to keep him in olive form. And we learned before, if the Amaretz says that these were not even huchsher l'kabel toma, then we believe him and the olives will be Torah, and therefore he can give them to the Kohen. So normally the Kohen likes to get everything processed, fully processed, and get oil. Here it's a little bit more convenient for the Kohen because he's going to have to press his own oil, his own olives. What if the season is over and I'm brought to a Kohen a barrel of wine? So the loch is lo yikabelena amen. He should not be makabel the wine from the Amaretz because he has to be concerned that maybe this barrel of wine is tamei. So Zok to Gemara. Make a small adjustment over here. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I muted myself by mistake. Zok to Gemara weiter. Over a Gidus Avadim, if the season was over, and they brought a chabos of wine, don't accept it from the Amaretz, leave it to the next season where there's Nema. So, what if the Kohen did take it? If it goes back to the Amaretz, and the Amaretz brings it to me next year, we're allowed. So why can I hold on to it? Why can't the Kohen hold on to it? And he could save it for next year. What's the difference? Whose warehouse it's in for this year? Amar lahu. So Rav Sheshes answered, Tinitua, your Shaila is actually a Brisa. So let's turn over the Amud onto Amud Beis, and we'll see what the Brisa tells us. Trying to get it to turn over. It was a little slow. I apologize on my half is not changing. Waiting for it to turn over. Take my Gemara out. I'm going to take my good old-fashioned Gemara because it's not connecting. Okay. Not connecting to the online docs. Just take my Gemara. Hard copy. I've got a hard copy of the Gemara as well. So let's turn it on the base. So that was the Gemara cycle. Can the coin hold on to the oil until next year? That's the Gemara. I'll tell you the right. So the Sheshet is going to be the following right. Chaver the Amoritz, the Talmud Chacham, and the Amoritz that were brothers. So Yosy and they yashin from their father. The father left over an estate. Naturally, the Chaver is going to want to gravitate to yashin all those items that are tahor, and let his brother keep those things that are tamei, because if he lets his brother have things that are tamei, that are tar, besides the fact that it's a shame, there's also a problem with being matched with his brother with being the tamei, things that aren't allowed to become tamei. So, what can he do? So the halacha is, their father was also an Amoritz. So Yoka Loimer Loi, the father can tell the Amoritz, Toil Ata, Chitin Shabamakum Ploini, Vani Chitin Shabamakum Ploini. What he could do is, he could say, if he knows that some Chitin were Hochshur L'Kabbatum, let's say his father had 2 warehouses a week in 2 different cities. So he could say, I know in one city the wheat for sure was not Hochshur L'Kabbatum. They never got wet. He could tell his brother Amoritz, you take the items. You can take the items that were Hochshur. I'll take the items that were not Hochshur. This way, at least, I can protect those from becoming trouble. So that works. That works because we're splitting up chitim. And we'll say with Brera that the chitim that you got were always yours, and the chitim that I got were always mine. What's your rationale? The ones that I know are Hochshur L'Kabbatum, the father could tell the Amoritz, you take those. And I'll take another batch of wheat that our father had. That he knows, that we're not Hochshur. Since we're splitting one moon, Amrinan will say Yesh Brera, that what I got was actually always going to come to me, and what you got was always going to come to you. You don't say that we have no idea which chitin belongs to me or which chitin belongs to my brother, and therefore whichever chitin I have, we don't look at it like it was always destined to come to me. We look at it that I swapped anything that you have that was originally mine. I'm swapping for anything that I have that was originally yours. So we don't say that. Meaning, you cannot do it 2 meanings. So you can't say, I'll take the wheat, you take the barley. Because for sure, I had an equal credit to the wheat and an equal credit to the barley. But if it's all wheat we're talking about, then this will work. Now, what's the problem? What is the problem if, in fact, it's wheat and barley? Why can't we just swap out? At least I'll get whatever star. But Rashi tells us something very important. The Shnei meanings of Rashi ain't lemer prayer. Why? If it's Shemesa being nafo chelik lezeh, the chelik lezeh b'chalani. Each of the brothers had a portion in the wheat and in the barley. And if I swap it out, if the chaver swaps out with the Amoritz, the nimshach chaver zeh machlif aloi, the oiver b'lifnei iver l'sita mitzvah. He's going to be over and l'sita iver l'sita mitzvah. Why? Because if he gives the Amoritz something that's tar, and he allows the Amoritz to be metamed, he's going to be over and l'sita iver l'sita mitzvah. So that's what the problem is. That's why He wants to make sure that he'll get whatever is Torah, and that Amoritz was already Tama anyway, because there's no problem if he's a Tama already, something that's Tama before. That's more. So Yochalayim Toil Ata Chitin Shebamakim Ploini, Vani Chitin Shebamakim Ploini, Toil Ata Yain Shebamakim Ploini, Vani Yain Shebamakim Ploini. That you could do. Abolo Yomeloi Toil Ata Lach Vani Yavish. You take all of the liquid, and I'll take all of the solids. Or Toil Ata Chitin. You take all the wheat, Vani Star, and I'll take the barley. That you cannot do. The Tani Allah, and we actually have a brisa that further explains this halacha. And it said, Yosy chaver sarif halach. What does the chaver do when he couldn't split the wheat? What he had to do is he had to take part of the lach, part of the yavish, which means now the chaver has items that are tamei. What does the chaver do? How does he deal with all of these things that we assume are tamei? Sarif halach. He has to burn all those items of truma that he's choishes are going to be tamei, and umanriach es hayavish. And he could retain anything that's dry because they were never hooked from the kabbalah. The problem is, why should the chaver destroy the truma that lach yanichena legasabo? So his father left over a barrel of wine, right? That barrel of wine, his father was an Amoritz. It was considered tamei, and he wouldn't have been able to give it to the kohen. But we learned that if the Amoritz holds onto it, until the next gas season, it will be tar. So the question over here is, why should the brother burn it? Let the brother save it for the next gas. And for the Gemara, you know why the brother can't do this? It's because it's the davar she'ein lo gas. It's a type of product that doesn't have season. Rashi says, like beer of dates, of truma. Dates don't have a specific season when they're pressed. So therefore, since there is no gas, it's not covered by this special allowance that the Shasta gas, we assume that it's tahor. Gas is the season of pressing. So since there's a special allowance that the Chum made during the pressing season, we assume everything is tar because people are super, super careful. But if you have something that you press like date that doesn't have a season, so that was never covered by this special allowance. So that's why this son of the coin cannot save it. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, so why don't you save it for the Yom Tov? We said Yom Tov also, everyone's belief. It was a product that wouldn't have lasted that long. It would have went bad. So since it would have went bad, and he has no way to somehow protect its tahira, all he can do is burn it, and he's allowed to benefit from the heat. He's allowed to use it as fuel, but other than that, it's treated as truma that's coming. If he said that I was mafresh into it, Revius Kodesh, then he will be believed. Because since he's trusted with the Kodesh, he's automatically trusted for everything else in the barrel. Because you can't split the barrel in half. It's not awesome. We learned in a brisa. Beishamai ubeisilo. Moedin beishamai ubeisilo. Both Beishamai and Beisil agree. Sheboitin la'oisei Pesach. Then boitin la'oisei truma. We have somebody who wants to come to the Beis Hamikdash to bring his carbon Pesach. The problem that he has is the only way for him to be able to get to the Beis Hamikdash will be if he passes through a field that's called a Beis Pras. A Beis Pras is a soda, a field that there was a kever in once upon a time. It was plowed up, and in those days they didn't bury the mason so deep. So the plow blade would have cut up the mace into a whole bunch of tiny little pieces, and now there could be a series of tiny bone fragments or meat fragments all over this field. So if you walk through it, there won't be a too much oil because you don't have any large pieces. You need larger pieces of a mace, great too much oil. But if he accidentally touches something, he will become tummy. So how is he going to get through this minefield that has tumah everywhere? So there is a kula where they allow bedika. One of the things that they allow is it's literally like clearing a minefield. If you blow hard along the ground as you're walking in front of you, any small little pieces will blow out of your way. So you can sort of clear yourself a path by blowing and scattering everything from that are in your path. So that's a kula to rely on such a system. However, there's a mitzvah to come bring a korban pesach. There's even a chiyuv kares if you don't bring the korban pesach. So in order to help someone bring a korban pesach, they will rely on the kula, and they will allow you to clear the field in this fashion. But the ain't loikin loich truma. If someone needs to go somewhere to get to his truma or to bring truma, there you wouldn't allow such a kula. Why? Because there's no rush. He can go through this field, he'll become tummy, he'll swimming stomach, and then he can go through the higher process, and then he can eat the truma afterwards. But according to Pesach, there's a deadline. It has to be brought on a specific day. So that's what the Bryce says. Both the Shammai and the Silva. In fact, in my voice, exactly what is this Bedika that we're referring to? The Bedika is, like I said before, you blow in front of you as you walk, so if there's any small pieces of bone, they will scatter and you will not touch them. There was a different method of Bedika. The halacha is if you have a base of props, Chagiga, that someone walked over it, there's footsteps on it, someone trampled it, that's going to be killer. I got my phone back. I hope Lloyd can still hear me. So we'll go by there. Giving shear in the car is not as easy as expected, but we'll get through it. The other way of being guided is the Ulas method, which is base of pressure. If the base of pressure was totally trampled out, it'll be tar because we say anything in it was already moved away because someone walked through. The base of pressure midos is tahar. The oisei peta for people who are coming to bring the korban pesach. Once again, we want someone to bring the korban pesach. Lo yamidu the rayim the makam kos. They didn't answer walking through such a base of pras and say that you cannot rely on the dika of the base of pras for korban pesach, because if you don't bring the korban pesach, you have kos. Since pesach is a very severe mitzvah, therefore they said we'll be a little bit more lax in our gezerah d'rabbanan of a base of pras. But when you're eating a brain, the mucky curry. But la'aychli truma, since there's a chiyuv of bisa b'dei shemayim, if someone eats truma when it's tamei, and there's no rush to eat it now, and meet the brayim, the makamisa. They did say that we don't want you to eat truma if you went through a base of pras. Better be tire yourself first. Just go over what happens if you needed to bring a korban pesach? And we know both Bisham and B'Sur Moida that you can do the methods of Bedika on the base of Prash. You can blow and walk through behind the air that's cleared the field, or you check to make sure that people stomp where you walk, and there will assume there's no bone fragments. So you did it, and we're allowing you to bring the korban pesach. Once you're there already, do you also eat truma, or do you have to wait another 7 days and treat yourself like you're talking about the truma? Because we've already given you the allowance for the pesach. Now you're allowed to eat truma as well. Ula says, Ula says, once we're relying on this Bedika for the korban pesach, we'll rely on it for truma as well. They were only matter for the pesach, but for truma, he'll still have to go through the hazah and go through the higher process. This elderly man said, and I think we know that whenever the Gemara says Ahu Saba, it's referring to Eliyahu Navi. He said, don't argue on Ula. Ula says it's mutar lecha b'trumasai. You should agree with Ula that once we allow this process for the korban pesach, we'll extend it to the earthly truma as well. It's non-kavasai, because we have a Mishnah that seems to agree with Ula. And this is what the Mishnah says. If Amar Hifrashti l'soicha Revius Kodesh Memon. If the Amoritz has a barrel full of Truma that he claims has some kachim in it, he's believed. So you see, Amami the Hamina Kodesh, Haminami Truma. You see, you could piggyback the Truma onto the Kodesh. So too, if you're being retired of this person with a carbon pays off, you can piggyback the Truma onto Akadami the Hamina pays off, Hamin Nami. Dr. Gemar Vajra, Kadi Yain the Kadisha. The Mishnah says if you have jugs of wine and oil that are midumois, and at first glance that means they have Truma and Chulin mixed in, you could, B'shas Gas, you can assume that the drugs are tahar as well. Tana, we look to the Brisa. Ein Nemonin, Amaratim are not believed, loy ala kankanim, the loy ala truma. Not on the drugs and not on the truma. So this obviously means, at first glance, so loy b'shas hagas, the Amaratim are not believed at all. Doktim are kankanim demai. Exactly what jugs are we talking about in this Brisa that says that Amaratim are not believed to say that their jugs are Torah? Ikan kanim de kodesh. If we're talking about the jugs of kodesh, now kodesh we assume will be tar. So imagine an Amoritz brings a barrel of wine, and we trust that the wine is kodesh, is tar, and we allow to use the wine for the misachah. So the jugs are also going to be tar. Because if you're trusting him that the contents of the barrel are tar, by definition you have to say that the barrels are tar. Because it's a design for kachim to use the wine inside the barrel and then declare the barrel from it. Because that would almost look like you're actually burning, you're actually using wine that's from it. So it can't be referring to the jugs of kachim. So it must be that the Brisa is telling us that the kankanim of truma are tamei. Why don't I need the Brisa to tell me that? Ashta truma noy mehemin. If we're declaring the truma inside the barrel as tamei products, kankanim mehemin, would we say that the drugs themselves are tar? That doesn't make sense. So once again, the Brisa that says you're not nemin al kankanim, what is it referring to? Ella must be bereikanin the kodesh. Must be referring to empty jugs of kodesh, which means during the year, if an Amoritz brings a jug full of wine, we use the wine. After we use the wine, the question is, are you allowed to continue using that barrel? Or ubamalayin the truma, or if an Amoritz brings a jug of wine to give a coin for truma, ubashasagitos, during the period of time where we do accept wine as truma from an Amoritz, because this season, the pressing season, where we assume that the wine will be tar. So the problem is, our mission says, Kadayain, the Kadeshemin, Hamidamois. Our mission says, the Kadayain and Kadeshemin that have mixture of truma in it, those are going to be tar. My love, Midamois the truma. So our mission is saying that jugs that come along with the truma during the Shas Hagas with the Amoritz, our mission says that they're Torah. Yet this Brisa says that they're not Neman ala Kankan. So it's a stira between our Mishnah and the Brisa. The Midamois that we're talking about in our Mishnah, it doesn't mean it's just Chulin and Truma mixed in. Because if it was just Chulin and Truma, in fact, we would look at the barrels as if they're Tamei. But if there's Kodesh inside, only then do we look at the barrels as if they're Torah. Is there such a thing as the word dimua mixture when there's Kodesh? By Truma it makes sense because you have Tevel that has some content of Truma in it, and it has some content of Chulin in it. That's a good use for the word dimua, dumas. But kodesh is all kodesh. So how does it make sense to use the word mixture when you have a barrel full of kodesh? Dr. Gemara, the metaris tibloi, only men in the circle. What happened is you had a barrel of tevel, and you made sure that it would stay tar, because after you would separate some truma from the barrel, you then want to take some of the chulin wine and use it in the Beis Hamikdash with a socket. Since we're talking about Kodesh, therefore these Karls we say are also Torah. Not only the wine Torah inside, but the barrel will be Torah as well. As Rashi says, it's designed for Kodshim to use wine and then say that the barrel is Tomei. So therefore we say that the barrel will be Torah as well. Kodem Lakita Shivin Yain, how early do they start preparing the presses? 70 days before the pressing season. Amar Abaye said, Shmami now, we see from here that Dinahu, the halachi is the Ayla Arisa of Yitzchak Agulfe, Shivim Yaim Mechamim Matzarta. An aris who accepts to work the land for somebody else, it's appropriate that he should start preparing the presses 70 days before the pressing season. That's how it's done. That's the minhag, and therefore that's what an aris should do as part of his responsibility to the landowner to work his land. Okay, let's stop over here. We finish the daf Baruch Hashem. Misham tomorrow we'll do Chavav. We're closing in very quickly to the end of the Masechta, and we should assume is to finish Moed and then start Yevamis. I just wanted to announce, Shol asked me to announce it again, that there's going to be a siyum for Seder Moed. I believe it's going to be Wednesday night in Viewmount. I think the shul sent out some notifications for it, and everybody's encouraged to attend. You have a wonderful, wonderful day.